Boker Tov and Chag Sameach, everyone. It's time for Law and Order, SPE. That is Special Pesach Edition. So it's time for us to talk about our Torah portion for this week. But our Torah portion for this week takes us, as it were, back in time. How appropriate is that? We are going to be returning this week to the book of Exodus because in honor of Pesach, we'll have a special reading. But what's my object lesson for today? Well, of course, it's this. We have a lot of work to do. If we're going to get rid of all of this limits, it's going to take some effort on all of our parts in order to be ready to live without leaven in our dwelling places. Okay. Point made. Robin and I are eating a lot of pasta and taking care of a lot of donuts and frozen goods that we're trying to get rid of before the holiday so that they don't go to waste. Each of us celebrates the holiday in its own way, but I should report that apparently, at last, matzah has appeared at the Tom Thumb at 407 and Morris, very close to us. So if you lack for at least matzah, I think you can get it there. All right, our special Torah portion. Our special Torah portion comes from Parsha Bo in the book of Exodus. And so we have to go backwards. Now, this brings us to a technology issue, which is, well, let me reverse the conversation and say, have you ever thought about why so many congregations have more than one Sefer Torah in their ark? Why do we collect them? Is it just that another aspect of Jewish OCD? No, it's not. It's actually a reflection of the limits of technology. Because, of course, when we invented, no, actually, I take that back. When the Christians invented the book, or as we know it, a codex in which all of the pages are bound together along the same edge, the end result is that you can open it up to any page and get to what you want to. It's the first CD-ROM, as it were. However, when you have a sefer or a scroll, it doesn't work that way. You have to wind it forward and wind it back to get from one isolated passage to another. That's why we read it all the way through over the course of a single year. But what happens when, like over Pesach, you have to go back to Exodus? Well, you could make the Gabbai stand there and you all watch him while he rolls it back, or you can take out a second scroll before the service and you can set it to the right passage. And that's what we've traditionally done. So most congregations in the world have at least two Torot and many more than that. And so it does become a virtue in itself to collect Sifrei Torah and have them around so that you can get to wherever you need to instantly, or relatively instantly, for the purposes of holiday readings and special readings and all those sort of things. All right, technology out of the way. Our Torah portion, providing our passage on Pesach, is Bo. And that is the culmination of the 10 plagues that are going on. And then, and this is really what we end up focusing on Pesach, is that God interrupts the action like a commercial in a compelling TV drama and tells us how to observe Pesach. So there we are waiting for the next plague, and suddenly the camera goes to fade, and then God is telling Moses, well, when you observe the holiday of this day, you will do X, Y, and Z to, fend off the heartbreak of psoriasis, or whatever it is that you imagine a commercial would be like this. So we get an explanation of the holiday, what is supposed to be done as families, and just as important, what is supposed to be done within the community at large. So, because we are talking about a sacrifice centric early ideation of Judaism, not only are we talking about the lamb that we slaughter and we all have to eat at once on the night of Pesach while we tell the story, but we also have to do a series of sacrifices for the temple that, quite honestly, in the book of Exodus doesn't yet exist. So it's slightly anachronistic, but we're not going to get into that in any case. So that's what we address, and that's what we read. So what can I tell you about this passage that we can find applicable to our lives today? Well, so big ideas in our Torah portion are the distinctiveness of the Jewish people, that we may dwell with and beside and often in harmony with other cultures, but we have our own distinct practices. It's going to be a triple coming together of holidays this year. We've got, of course, Pesach, but the Christians are going to be celebrating Easter. And this year, our Muslim neighbors are going to be celebrating a Ramadan. So everybody's got their own distinctive way of celebrating the season, and that's a good thing. And while we may be able to come together, you can invite non-Jews to your Seder. We have an invitation for a iftar, which is a breaking of the fast over at the Islamic Association here in Flower Mound. I'm going. My family is going. I hope you'll consider going. You'll see it, as all things, posted on the website, and it's on the Facebook page. So sign up, let them know you're coming. And it happens to fall on the end of Pesach. It's after sunset on the 23rd, which means that you can have a pita with your lovely Muslim food from different traditions. It's really a lovely event, so I encourage you to go. Okay, back to the task at hand. So there we are, and we are commanded to do these things, and particularly the very weird one is the obligation to slaughter a lamb after keeping it around for 4 days so it doesn't manifest any blemishes. And then you're going to take the blood and you're going to dash it on the doorposts of your house, because this signals to the mashchit, the destroyer who is bringing the 10th and final plague, the plague of the death of the firstborn, and will alert the destroyer to pass over, or quite literally skip. That's one of the funny things about Pesach. The word Pesach, which we translate as Passover, is that's okay. It's not a bad translation, but it literally comes from the verb for what lambs do. What do lambs do? They skip. So it's the skipping holiday, which clearly associates it with lambing and the eating of lambs. But in any case, I think that's a little, very, very ancient little tidbit that attaches to the holiday. So at the year when we're shearing and culling lambs is the year we celebrate, or the time of year that we cull lambs is the time of year when we celebrate our going forth from Egypt. Wonderful coincidence. Okay. What I really want to talk about is something that many observers have made, that you may have already made yourself, which is that quite a number of the plagues of Egypt the 10 plagues that God sends against the Egyptians are actually the trolling. Now we have this word in our vocabulary, trolling the gods of Egypt. So, when you're plagued with frogs, that's making fun of the frog god of Egypt, and the affliction of the affliction of the storm, and the fiery hail is making fun of the Egyptian god of storms, etc., etc., etc. So actually, it's a it's a parody commentary on the impotence of Egyptian gods. That's part of why the 10 plagues happen the way they do, why they're the particular plagues, why it isn't that God interrupts Egypt's internet service or does any number of other things. There's actually a little poke, a little shtuck going on with each one of these to remind the Egyptians that their gods are not gods. As it turns out, the culmination of all of this, the sacrifice of the lamb, is exactly the same thing. Did you know that the Egyptians have a ram god, a sheep god? Um, it's important to understand that in polytheistic societies that there are overlapping mythologies and overlapping gods, and maybe a god who is very prominent in, say, the north of Egypt is not so prominent in the south of Egypt, and vice versa. There'll be gods that get emphasized depending on what the culture is. So, worship of the Nile is important for everybody. On the other hand, sheep herding is not exactly what everybody does. But in fact, one of the less known but important Egyptian gods is called Kernum. I think that's how you pronounce it, Kernum. And Kernum is a ram god. He has sort of straight, it's not so clear he's a ram god because he has straight horns. But most particularly, Kernum is one of the gods of fertility. Everybody knows Osiris and Isis and that sort of thing, but Kernum is one of those also. And particularly interesting is that the mythological story of Kernum's role is that he is the former of humanity. Again, there are other Egyptian mythologies that describe the creation of man differently, but in the mythology of Kernum, he is effectively a potter. So he makes humanity out of clay. Get it? It's parallel to the Genesis story, where God makes us out of clay. And in fact, later in rabbinic tradition, God is compared to a potter who molds and forms humanity. So there's a lot of trolling going on here. Now, look at the performance of this troll and how it works out. We are told to stake out a lamb for 4 days by our houses. Now, that can be read two ways by the Egyptians. Each and every Israelite household is either, one, conforming to the Egyptian culture and embracing their God, or two, we're letting them know that we're going to kill this symbol of their God, and there's nothing they can do about it. All right? I suspect it's more like the latter, though the argument has been made that it also is kind of a twist ending where everyone's looking and say, oh, look at, they're worshiping our God, and then suddenly we slaughter them. So I do think it's a long-term troll, and it's meant to prove that the Israelites remain a distinct people among the general culture. It's also, quite honestly, a declaration of war. When we not only slaughter this symbolic god of Egypt and then take its blood and put it on our doorpost, holy toot, we are telling them that there's no way we are ever going to become Egyptian, embrace the Egyptian way, accept our slavery, and it's a fraught action. in a situation where we were still slaves, and the danger of physical retaliation hung over us each and every day, to go ahead and perform this particular ritual commanded by God and saying, we're with the true creator of humanity, not this false creator of humanity. We are really sticking it in the face of the Egyptians. And it's a demonstration that we are committed to our new God project. So it reminds us in our culture in Texas, where generally things are pretty well received, and diversity is largely tolerated, but we suffer all kinds of little microaggressions from the majority, right? People who try and convert us, and people who are always questioning why we insist on being different, why we may not choose to observe Christmas, or what's your Easter look like? Well, my Easter doesn't look like that. I don't even observe Easter. I'm Jewish. The question that's always asked: what church do you go to? I don't go to any church. I go to a synagogue. Puzzled look. What's a synagogue? See, those little microaggressions we deal with all the time, but our Torah portion reminds us that we need to be proud. We need to be out there. We need to be standing up for our God in the same way that God stood up for us. We need to be standing up and leaning in on our tradition the way God leaned in for us and brought us out of the land of Egypt. Once we were slaves, but now we are free. That's my Zoom Torah portion, Taste of Torah for this week. I hope you all have a holy and inspiring Pesach. I look forward to seeing many of you at the Saturday community Pesach, when you all skip in to enjoy it. But and by the way, if you don't have a first night Seder to go to for whatever reasons, let me know and I will try and find you a place to go. There are always Jews who are happy to fulfill the commandment to invite in their neighbors to participate in the Seder. So just give me a ring before Friday and we'll make something happen. Chag Sameach. I look forward to celebrating the holiday with you.